Good afternoon. Today we're going to be looking at that clauses and we're going to be learning how to change direct speech to reported speech. So what is a clause? Clauses are like mini sentences. Clauses have a subject and a predicate, that is verb plus object. Clauses are inside sentences. So for example, we have subject, verb, object. Dogs eat meat and bones. What is the subject? Dogs. What is the verb? Eat. What is the object? Meat and bones. This is a clause. Now moving forward, let's look at a that clause. What is a that clause? Well, that clauses function like nouns in a sentence. For example, people say something. Something, that's a noun. People say what? People say something. What do people say? People say that earth is round. That earth is round is a that clause. Okay? You can see that if I exchange something for that clause, that earth is round, you can see how a that clause functions like a noun in a sentence. That clauses have a main clause. Okay, people say. That clauses usually begin with that. Okay. Now, moving forward, let's look a little more deeply. That clauses are the objects of a main verb. Here the main verb is say. Okay, people say, and the object, that earth is round. Okay. Usually the main verb is a reporting verb. These are say, state, tell, think, agree, suggest, ask, argue, question, and request. That clauses have a subject and a verb. Here the subject is earth and the verb is, the be verb. Let's talk about direct speech. Direct speech is when we write down the exact thing someone said in the past. This is usually used when telling a narrative story or in newspaper articles. For example, in the year 1800s, the 1800s, now is the 2020s, 2022s. So what happens? This man says, money is important. If I quote him directly, then I would use a direct clause. He said, money is important. Direct speech usually has a reporting verb, say, ask, think, agree. Here the reporting verb is said. Usually has quotation marks. Okay. Usually has punctuation inside the quotation marks. Here I have a period. And usually has a capital inside the quotation marks. Money is capitalized. Lastly, there's a comma before the quoted speech or before the quotation marks. Let's look at reported speech. Reported speech is when we write down what someone said in the past, but not as a quote. This is usually used in academic essays, scholarly articles, and in speech. For example, money is important. Okay, reported speech, he said that money was important. Let's look at what reported speech usually has. Reported speech usually has a reporting verb, say, ask, think, agree. Here it's said. It has a backshifted verb, was, is, was. The reported speech usually is inside of that clause. That money was important. Okay, that's the that clause, and it's inside, the reported speech is inside of that clause, not inside quotation marks. Now let's learn how to change direct speech to reported speech. So, to change direct speech to reported speech, we must first, okay, well, here is our reported clause. In the 1800s, he said money is important. Let's change this. First, remove the comma. Next, remove the capital. So no capital N, but small m. Remove the quotation marks. No quotation marks. Add a that after the reported verb. What is the reported verb? Said. So we're going to have said that. Lastly, we're going to backshift. That is push to the past the verb inside the that clause. In the 1800s, he said money was important. Okay, so if I look at this correctly as reported speech, in the 1800s, he said that money was important. Okay. Let's move forward, okay? So, to change direct speech to reported speech, another example. We must, okay, well, let's look at the direct speech first. Last week, he said, I will swim tomorrow. Okay, let's change this. First, we're going to remove the comma. Next, we're going to remove the capital and change the subject pronoun if necessary. Here, he said, I will swim, but he's not referring to me, he's referring to himself, so he said he. Okay, so referring to himself, he. Next, we're going to remove the quotation marks. No quotation marks. Next, we're going to add that after the reported verb. He said that. Here, once again, said is the reporting verb. And we're going to backshift or push the past the modal inside the that clause. What is the modal? Will. So we're going to say would. Okay, moving forward now. Oh, one more thing. We're going to change the time expression. Last week, he said he will swim the next day. Okay, moving forward now. So what do we have? Last week, he said that he would swim the next day. Okay, we're going to look at, in a little bit, we'll look at how to change time phrases. So let's look at another one. Another example. Last week she said, I studied for the test. Okay, let's look at this. We're going to first remove the comma. Then we're going to remove the capital and change the subject pronoun if necessary. She is not talking about me. She's referring to herself. So it's going to be she. Next, we're going to remove the quotation marks. No quotation marks here or here. Next, we're going to add that after the reporting verb. So what is the reporting verb? Said. So we're going to say that. She said that. Okay, we're going to backshift. That is push to the past the verb instead of that clause. Last week she said that she had studied for the test. Okay, if we look at this completely, last week she said that she had studied for the test. All right, let's look at backshifting now because these are there's a process to it. So let's look at it. Okay, he swam. Okay, he swam. If I backshift this, he had swum. Okay, he swims. If I backshift this, he swam. He has swum. Present perfect. If I backshifted, he had swum. Past perfect. He has been swimming. Present perfect progressive. Okay, he has been swimming. He had been swimming. Past perfect progressive. He had swum. Past perfect. He had swum. Past perfect. It doesn't change. He is swimming. Okay, present progressive. He is swimming. Past progressive. He was swimming. He was swimming. Past progressive. He had been swimming. Past perfect progressive. And lastly, he's going to swim. He was going to swim. So here is a little map showing you how we backshift. Usually simple present becomes the past present. Simple past becomes the past perfect. Present perfect becomes the past perfect. The present perfect progressive becomes the past progressive. Past progressive becomes past perfect progressive. And the present perfect progressive becomes the past perfect progressive. Whew, I hope you can remember that, but if not, don't worry too much. Practice makes perfect. Let's look at how to backshift modals. Will becomes would, can, could, may, might, shall, should, must, had to. We also need to backshift or to change our time expressions. We're going to show you a little bit how to do this, but take about 10 seconds and try to guess which of these expressions on the right matches the expressions on the left. Take about 10 seconds. Okay, next week becomes the following week. Tomorrow becomes the following day. Yesterday becomes the previous day. Last year becomes the year before. This morning becomes that morning. Today becomes that day. And now becomes then. So if I am reporting something someone said in the past and they use these expressions, I'm going to change these expressions to these expressions on the right. Okay? So when talking about the future in the past, if someone said something about the future in the past, then I would change it to, for example, I would say next and the time, referring to like next week or that week, the next year, then I would change it to the following and the time after. For example, next week becomes the following week or the week after. If we're talking about if the person said tomorrow in the past, then I would say, then when I report it, I would say the following day or the day after. When talking about the past in the past, okay? So for example, if someone is talking about a past event in the past, I would change it or push it further back. So I would say, for example, they might say last time, I would change it to the previous time or the time before. Example, change time for month. Last month becomes the previous month or the month before. If the person says yesterday, in the past, then I would say the previous day or the day before. When talking about the present in the past, I would change it to this morning becomes that morning. Today becomes that day. Tonight, that night. Now becomes then. Okay, quick summary. So, what is direct speech? Direct speech is when we write down the exact thing someone said word for word in the past. This is usually done when telling a narrative story or in newspaper articles. For example, he said money is important. But when I'm reporting something someone said in the past, but not as a direct quotation, then usually I have to change it. I have to use reported speech. This is usually used in academic essays, scholarly articles, and when speaking. For example, he said that he would swim tomorrow. Okay, to change direct speech to reported speech, we must remove the comma, remove the capital, and change the subject pronoun. So last week he said, I will. No, last week he said he would. He. Remove the quotation marks. Add that after the reported verb. So he said that. Backshift, that is push to the past the verb or modal inside the that clause. So he will becomes he would. And lastly, we have to change the time expressions. Last week he said that he would swim the next day. Anyways, that concludes my presentation. Thank you for sitting through 11 minutes of it. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you in class.